Section 18 of the Family Kitchen Gardener. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ray Smith. The Family Kitchen Gardener by Robert Buist. Section 18. Cherry. Cerasus. Variation. Cerecer. French. Kirschbaum. German. Some species of the cherry is native to every temperate climate. History records its culture before the Christian era. It is the earliest of our stone fruit, and comes into use about the 8th or 20th of June, according to the season. The tree is of great diversity of habit, size, and shape. The fruit, too, possesses every variety of flavor, from the most tart to honey sweet. In cookery and distillation it is compounded into endless forms. In ancient and modern times it is peculiarly a wayside tree. An avenue of cherry trees characterized the dwellings of the great in the 16th century. The medicinal properties of the fruit are rather vague, although it is considered wholesome. Its gum is supposed to be nearly equal to the gum arabic of commerce. The wood is extensively used in domestic cabinet work. There are nearly 100 varieties, whose qualities may be embraced in half a dozen sorts. Bigarreau. Color pale yellow, with red cheek, and when fully ripe, of a bright amber. Large size, irregularly heart-shaped. Flesh firm, adhering to the stone, rich and high-flavored. Stalk about 2 inches long, growth strong and upright. A great bearer, hangs long on the tree. Ripe about the 14th of July. Black tartary or black circassian. Fruit very large, irregularly heart-shaped, of a shining black color when fully ripe. Stalk 1.5 inches long. Flesh dark purple, very rich and juicy. Stone quite small. Ripe from the 20th to the end of June. The finest black cherry that is grown. A handsome tree, of rapid growth and large foliage. Carnation. Color bright shining waxy marbled red. Fine round form. Stalk short and stout. Flesh tender when fully ripe, of a rich subarctic flavor. One of the best looking varieties. Ripe about the 1st of July, and hangs long on the tree. A good bearer. Tree low hanging and round headed. Elton. Color pale, waxy yellow. Cheek next to the sun of a shining, pale red malted or streaked. The very largest sized heart shaped. Stalk 1.5 to 2 inches long. Flesh, when fully ripe, tender, juicy, and of the very best flavor. Ripe about the 20th of June. Tree of strong growth and regular form, foliage large. Kentish. There are several varieties that go under this name, such as May cherry, early Richmond, Flemish of some. There is also late Kentish or pie cherry, very common. The sort we now allude to is early Kentish or early Richmond. It generally produces a fruit in pairs, of fine dark red color when ripe. Stalk about 1 inch long, adhering to the stone. Flesh juicy, of a rather sharp acid flavor. Ripe from the 15th to the 25th of June. A low spreading tree, in very general cultivation. Late Duke. Color dark red. Large size, of a heart shape rather rounding. Flesh amber colored, rich and juicy. Stone large, oval. Ripe end of July. Does well in light soils, an excellent late variety either for the dessert or the kitchen. Mayduke. Every lover of this fruit has heard of the Mayduke cherry, which for fine flavor, prolific bearing, and early ripeness stands alone. When fully ripe it is the cherry, and should be in every garden or orchard. Color very dark red, round form. Flesh very juicy, rich and melting. Stone small, great bearer. Tree regularly formed. Wood short and full of spurs. Ripe about the 8th of June. This variety is invariably pulled before it is ripe. Morello, the latest of all the cherries. It hung on the tree with us last year until the 24th of August. They are so tart that neither birds nor bipeds partake. Fruit round, color very dark or quite black when fully ripe. Flesh very dark, more juicy than any other variety, and has not an equal for it. It is used from the middle of July to the middle of August. Tree of medium growth, round and pendulous form. Common Morello is a smaller and inferior variety. White Bigarreau, White Heart, and Ox Heart of some. It is not our purpose to decide what fruits belong to these names, whereof so many writers disagree. Our object is to call attention to the variety that ripens about the 15th of June, just between the Mayduke and the Elton. We cultivate it under the former name. Fruit heart-shaped, of a pale yellowish-white color, with marbled red on the side towards the sun. Flesh, when fully ripe, tender and luscious. Stone large. Tree regularly formed, and a great bearer when fully established. These constitute the best of the cherries, and such as produce their fruit throughout the season. I am aware of the very high character borne by some of the new sort, which we have not tested, nor have they been fully tried by others. To enter into a detail of such would frustrate our object, in directing attention only to the best known for family use or the market. Culture. A light sandy loam, in an open exposure, is the best soil for the cherry. Though we have them bearing fruit in both wet and dry soils, yet the finest orchards are known to be on a rich sandy loam over a gravelly bottom. We prefer planting this tree early in spring. They will require to be 25 feet apart. The pruning is of the simplest form, many of the kind rarely requiring the knife, while others, such as the bigarreau, need to have the long rampant shoots that stretch beyond the boundary of the tree shortened every September, till they are formed. Propagation. This is done both by budding and grafting. The former is the most general practice for nurserymen who sow early, in August, large quantities of the common black cherry, about 1 inch deep, which vegetate freely in spring, and after 2 years' growth are fit to be budded. This is done on August 1st, even the 1st of September, according to the weather. Transplant the stalks 1 year before they are worked. They thus make more fibrous roots, and when required to be moved again will grow with great certainty. The cherry is brought to our markets in the most slovenly state, in large tubs, and frequently pulled from the stems, a mere compound of half-bruised, half-rotten, half-ripe fruit, and of course it brings much less than its real value. Cherries should be pulled with care, having the stems all attached to the fruit, and handled as little as possible. If for the table, pick them a few hours before they are wanted, and put them in a cool place. If for the market, then put them in shallow vessels to prevent bruising as much as possible. They will bring double the price of fruit in the ordinary state. Currant. Ribes rubrum. Grosselli agrappa duetrelle. French. Johannisbeer. German. The red and black currant of the gardens are considered native to the northern parts of Europe. The black is evidently an inherent of a cool climate, for it rarely produces its fruit in perfection, the berries falling before being ripe. There are several varieties of currants native of North America, but very different in habit and characters for those cultivated. There are few or no medicinal values attached to the fruit. Currant wine is a beverage that was known to our fathers, but has been superseded by the more expensive and fashionable Port Madeira. The fruit has a pleasant, cooling, acid flavor, relished by most individuals when ripe. From it there is a very excellent jelly made, an indispensable condiment to many fashionable dishes of the day. The green fruit is also used for tarts, but for that purpose is much inferior to rhubarb or gooseberries. Ribes nigra, or the black currant, is a very rich fruit, produced in bunches of from 3 to 5 inches long, but requires a moist, cool situation, shaded from the noonday sun. There are several varieties of it, called black grape, black Naples, and the common black. The fruit is made into jelly or jam, and much used in consumptive complaints. The red currant is a very familiar fruit, susceptible of great improvement by culture, worthy of the best care, and generally gets none. There are several varieties of it, at least it is grown under the variety of names. I have cultivated New Red, Knight's Early Red, Red Grape, and lastly, May's Victoria, neither of which excel the old Red Dutch that I have cultivated 25 years ago. Red currants and raspberries make the finest jelly. Champagne. This is a variety evidently between the red and white, of a pink color. White Dutch. The white currant is preferred for the table, it being more sweet and palatable than any of the other sorts. It grows like the two preceding, and requires the same treatment. Propagation and culture. The best mode of increasing the plant is by selecting cuttings of good, strong young wood, about 1 foot long. The eyes from the lower part of the shoot, for about 8 inches, must be cut out previous to planting, which will prevent suckers from being thrown up from the roots. Plant them in early spring as the ground can be prepared, or late in the autumn, just before the ground is closed with the frost. A partially shaded situation is most suitable, though they will do in any rich, moist ground. In 2 years they will make fine plants, when they must be removed to where they are intended to remain for fruiting. Suckers and layers should never be used. Their after-culture is merely to train up the plant to one stem about a foot high, then allow it to spread and ramify uniformly, but never admit it to sucker from the root. Pruning. Thin out the shoots to allow all to stand free and clear of each other, then shorten back the young wood from about 3 to 6 inches of the preceding year's growth. This makes the bushes spur, as gardeners term it, and on these spurs the fruit is produced. The plant must be yearly supplied with manure along the roots, digging the ground carefully each spring and fall. By this treatment the fruit will be like bunches of grapes, and form a great contrast to the meager affairs so generally seen in the markets. Even in our best gardens their culture is very imperfectly attended to, producing fruit all skin and seeds, and giving a very faint idea of the richness and perfection to which it can attain. Plant them 8 feet apart, and if well treated they will last 20 years. Fig. Ficus carica. Figaro, French. Feigenbaum, German. The fig is one of the fruits first mentioned in history. Its cultivation appears to have been coeval with that of the apple and the grape. It has been admitted through all ages as an article of food, and some nations have even so exceedingly fond of the fruit that its exportation is forbidden. If history is to be relied on, we are retrograding in the culture and improvement of the fig. Pliny, the Roman naturalist, is said to have accurately described about 30 sorts. It was extensively used in all ceremonies, and was presented to appease anger. Asia is its native country, and we read of specimens of the fruit having been brought from the land of Canaan. It is cultivated to an immense extent in the south of Europe, and dried and exported. Many thousand tons reach this country that may have been grown with great facility along our east coast from North Carolina to Florida. It is not hardy enough to stand our winters without protection, but south of Virginia it might be made an article of profit, independent of its healthful influence on the constitution. There are supposed to be about 40 varieties, though we might very readily class them into the white, black, and brown. Black Isha, about 2 inches long and 2 inches in diameter, rather flat toward the apex, dark purple color, flesh red, of excellent flavor, and very productive. They all ripen in July, August, and September, and again a small crop in April and May. Brown turkey. In general culture. Size smaller than the former. Color brown, a great bearer. Flesh pale red. White Marcellus, white celestial. Fruit pale yellowish white, round form, medium size. Flesh rose white, very high flavored, a great bearer. Propagation. The fig is increased by cuttings and layers of the preceding year's wood, which root readily in most sandy soil. Cuttings of about a foot in length, planted any time from November to February in a shaded, moist soil, will root the first season, when they may be planted in a situation appropriate to them. Layers are made by taking a branch of 2 or 3 feet long, making an incision in it nearly halfway through the shoot, entering the knife half an inch below an eye, and drawing it toward the point of the shoot about 2 inches, which will form what gardeners call a tongue, on the lower extremity of which is the eye. Bend this portion gently, placing it under the ground about 4 inches, where it will form roots in a few months. Early the following spring these layers may be taken off and planted where they are required. Culture. The fig is not very particular in regard to soil. We have seen it covered in an extent of 40 feet by 20 in all kinds of soil from sand to clay, but the fairest fruit is obtained from trees grown on a sandy, loamy soil with dry bottom. On very rich soils it grows too much to wood. On very poor soils the fruit ripens prematurely. Fig orchards should be planted about 20 feet apart, and cultivated between the trees till they nearly cover the ground. Never speak of your figs blooming, they never flower to the eye, and the mode of fructifying is rather a speculation even in the present day. There is something very singular in the fructification of the fig. It has no visible flower, for the fruit rises immediately from the joints of the tree in the form of little buds with perforation at the end, but not opening or showing anything like petals or the ordinary parts of fructification. As the fig enlarges, the flower comes to maturity and concealment, and in eastern countries the fruit is improved by a singular operation called a caprification. This is performed by suspending by threads above the cultivated fig branches of the wild fig, which are full of species of synapse. When the insect has become winged, it quits the wild fig and penetrates the cultivated ones for the purpose of laying its eggs, and thus it appears both to ensure the fructification by dispersing the pollen, and afterwards to hasten the ripening by puncturing the pulp and causing a change to the nutritious juices. In France this operation is imitated by inserting straws dipped in olive oil. Library of Entertainment Knowledge. Pruning. The more you prune, the less the crop is proverbial in fruit culture. All that is required is to shorten any irregular or overgrown shoot and cut out dead wood, of which more or less will show itself every few years. Filbert. Corylus avellana. Noisette, French. Nussbaum, German. The common hazelnut will never be an article of profit to the American gardener or husbandman, yet we introduce the subject for some who cultivate for pleasure, variety, and amusement. It is a curious fact that all good things come from the East, so says writers on the Filbert. It comes from Pontus. Thousands grow wild on the braes of Scotland, and millions are over the whole United States from Maine to Texas. Cultivation has greatly improved the size, but we doubt of the flavor being more delicious. In its wild state it is a large-sized shrub with gray-colored bark and roundish heart-shaped leaves. The male catkin flowers appear on the preceding year's shoots in autumn and wait all winter for the expansion of the female flowers in spring. The varieties and quality are all very similar, though considerably differ in appearance. The red, white, Gosford, and frizz are sufficient for cultivation. Propagation. By layers is directed for figs, by suckers which spring up freely from the roots, or by seed that may be purchased at the fruit stores in any of our cities. Culture. They like a heavy, moist loam, and will grow where partially shaded. Plant them 8 to 10 feet apart. Prune is directed for currants, merely to check the superabundance growth. Throw them into spur buds for fruiting. End of section 18. Recorded by Ray Smith, Phoenix, Arizona.